I'm just going to go over what's required, the showstoppers that are required that will stop you from getting in, and what to submit and how to submit it, and just some tips that sometimes hold you guys up that we don't want that to happen. We want you guys to have a smooth sailing. Okay. So I'll stop this is mostly type approved. If you have any questions about masters, I can answer those, but the training was mostly on type approved since that's what we see the most of. And so I'll go with the showstoppers. And when I say showstoppers, these are the items that if they're missing or if they're incomplete or incorrect, they will stop you from getting logged in completely. And the first item is your application form. On your application form listed, you want to see all the pertinent information, at least that we look for at intake. I'm just giving you the stuff that we look for at intake, not what the plan reviewers look at. So you just want to get past us to get to the plan reviewer, and then they can look at all the more important stuff. So you need the master log number, and it must be the correct master log number, the address, the model number, and the elevation, the chosen elevation for that type approved, and the filing or the subdivision number. And then on your architectural plans, or some of you label them as elevations and options, or options and elevations, they must be stamped and electronically signed if they were prepared by licensed architects, and if you don't submit a permission letter from the architect saying that it is okay for you to reproduce their drawings. Code references are not required on the architectural plans for type approved, but if they are on there, they have to be the correct ones. Your foundation plans must be stamped and electronically signed. There is not a permission letter from the engineer that will exempt you from submitting foundation plans that are signed and sealed by the licensed engineer. Foundation plans must always be stamped and electronically signed, and they must have the address of the type approved on there. Code references are not required on the foundation plans, but if they are in there, they must be correct. The soil report, must be stamped and electronically signed. And if you're just submitting a soil summary letter, then you can submit that. It must be signed and sealed, but you also must submit the overall soil report. If the overall soil report is done by a different company than who did the summary letter. Does that make sense? Everybody's good?
Mhm.
Okay. So, because I do have some builders that do submit an overall soil report and a summary letter. And then there are some that just submit a soil report. So it just depends on which builder and what area you're building in. The plot plan must be stamped and electronically signed, and it must have the address. The zoning site plan does not need to be stamped and electronically signed. I'll say it again. The zoning site plan does not need to be stamped and electronically signed. A lot of people get held up on this because if it is signed and sealed, then it has to be done correctly. And so if you do send in one that's electronically signed, but there's an error in your electronic signature, then we have to kick it back. So to make it easy on yourselves, just do away with the electronic signature and the stamp on the zoning site plan altogether. The plot plan is the only one that needs to be signed and sealed. Valuation, you need a valuation for each unit, if it's a duplex or a townhome, and you need a valuation for the garage if it's a detached garage. If you're in the staple, go ahead.
With the valuation, are you needing the valuation like form or just entering in the valuation on the portal?
We prefer if you enter it in the portal. That's the best place to put it. but we'll take it however you submit it as long as we have it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Stapleton.
I just wanted to add, Dion, not to cut you off, but we had a question from Michael Payne asking for the difference between a type approved and a master. I included a link to the master and type approved submittal guide, but if you wanted just to touch really quickly on what the difference is between the two for those that
Okay.
may also have that question.
So for large developments that are using, for lack of a better term, cookie cutter homes, they submit a master plan of all of a specific model, say model A, and they'll submit all the options that go along with model A, all the elevations, all the, whether there's a basement or a crawl space or a detached garage, attached garage, all the available options, and that's submitted as a master for model A. That master is approved, is submitted, reviewed, and approved. Once that master is approved, the builder can then submit type approved. After a customer comes in and says, oh, I want this house with these options, then the builder will submit that house with those specific options to us for review in order to get the permit to build. And they it's a type approved submittal to that approved master. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he said he's golden.
Okay. Stapleton zoning application. It's a zoning application required for all submittals located in the Stapleton or the Central Park filings area. And we have to have it. Okay, so the next item is the affordable housing linkage fee application form. And basically it must have the actual type approved address on it, no lots and blots. We were getting some that had lots and blocks on them. We need the actual valid address on those forms. And there's two spots where you have to put the address. One is at the beginning of the form and one is at the end of the form. We need the actual address in both spots. You must give us the GFA for the house in the GFA field on the form. And if it's a duplex or townhome, we need separate GFAs for each unit listed on that one form. And if you're submitting multiple units like a duplex or townhome, one form for the entire submittal. So please put all addresses on that one form. Please put all GFAs on that one form. Please do not submit a separate affordable housing form for each unit or each townhome address or duplex address. And Bree Kyle, who does our affordable housing, has asked that the affordable housing form not be electronically signed, for it to be signed with an Adobe signature, or just type in your name. As long as that signature line is not blank, she'll take, even if you just type in your name, that's acceptable as well. But no electronic signatures on the form. It's difficult for her to maneuver when she's doing the affordable housing review. So if we could just remove all electronic signatures from the affordable housing form, that would be great. We won't kick it back if it is electronically signed, but she's asking that please discontinue using the electronic signature on the affordable housing form. And then your last show, your IECC checklist, it just needs to be signed by whoever prepares it. And if that preparer is a licensed architect or engineer, it needs to be stamped as well. But it does not need to be electronically signed. The IECC checklist just needs to be signed and stamped if applicable. But the electronic signature, the digital signature, is not required on the checklist. Does that make sense? And then on the non-showstoppers, which means if you don't have these, we won't kick you. If you don't submit these, we won't kick you back. But if you submit them, they need to be correct, if that makes sense. So if you do submit the framing plans with your initial submittal, they need to be stamped and electronically signed if prepared by a licensed engineer or architect, if they don't have a permission letter with them from the licensed engineer giving you permission to reproduce their plans. The framing plans aren't required to have code references, but if they are on there, they need to be correct. And the excavation plans need to be stamped and electronically signed if prepared by a licensed architect or engineer. And they must have the address on them. And the code references, if on there, must be correct, but they are not required. Any questions on the non-showstoppers?
I think we jumped over the manual SJ and D.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're just showstoppers. We don't look at them. We don't open them. They just have to be there. Sorry, guys. Are we good? Any questions?
Hi, Dion. This is Tamara. I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the IECC just needs to be signed.
It needs to be signed but if it's filled out or prepared by a licensed engineer or architect, it also needs to be stamped.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. And it can't be signed. Last I heard, sorry, the IECC checklist, last conversation I had with Eric Browning was it can't be signed by the builder as the owner. So there's a spot where the owner can sign the IECC checklist, but it can't be signed by you guys as the owner, even though at the time you do own it, you're not going to be the owner. So it can't be signed as you can't sign it as the owner. That's why it has to be signed. Usually most of them that I get in from you guys are signed by the energy consultant or the architect or engineer.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So here are some important tips I just want to pass on. When you're doing multiples, a submittal with multiple units like a duplex or a townhome, and you have multiples of the same document, like the type approved application form or the SUDP application form or the statement evaluation or the address cards, combine them into one PDF document. So like if you were submitting a duplex, or say you're submitting a sixplex townhome and it has 6 type approved application forms, you don't have to upload 6 separate documents, one for each application. Combine those applications into one PDF document and just submit that one document with all the applications in it. So that way you're not uploading like 20 documents and we have to go through 20 documents. It's a win-win on both sides. And I can't think, I think it's SUDP application, type approved application, statement evaluation, and there's one more I'm missing. Oh, address cards. Any of those multiples when you're submitting like duplexes or townhomes, combine them and we'll take them that way. And that way, I think it will make your life easier and our life easier. Okay. Plot plan and zoning site plan, they're not the same thing. They're 2 different documents. It just seems that whenever I send back a comment saying the plot plan needs to be signed and sealed or something was wrong with the plot plan, you guys will send back a plot plan and a zoning site plan. If I don't say something's wrong with the zoning site plan, you don't have to worry about it. It's just the plot plan. Usually there's not an issue with the zoning site plan. The zoning site plan is fine. So if you get a comment about your plot plan, just send back the corrected plot plan. Don't worry about the zoning site plan. They're not interchangeable. They're 2 different documents. Okay. Resubmittals must always, always, always be accompanied with a response letter to the plan reviewer. That holds up a lot of resubmittals. And we want to make sure that you give us a response letter back to the plan reviewer, not back to us as intake, but back to the plan reviewer for the resubmittal. Or if you submit, say your project is approved and you submit additional documents, we need a letter as to why. because your project's approved. We don't know why you're submitting this. Or if it's under resubmittal review and you already have a resubmittal in, but you're submitting more documents. We just need to know why. So always just, if you're submitting additional documents, just let us know why. And then the last thing, when you get intake comments from us, like you just submitted and we're processing it and you're missing structural plans or you're missing a sign and sealed on your plot plan and we send you back those comments, those don't need a letter to us. We don't need a letter back to the intake. We appreciate it, but you don't need it. And I think it'll save you guys some time. You just upload the corrected documents. We have the comments in our system, what we sent you, so we know what you were missing. And so you don't need that response letter back to intake. The only people that need response letters are plan reviewers.